Hi, I'm Jim from Beekeeping for Newbies. I want to go over some of the things you need to prepare for if you want to start beekeeping next spring. It might seem a little early in September. Spring is a long time away, but trust me, there are things you're going to want to get done before that. So I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you've probably kind of made up your mind that you want to do this next year. But the question is, how much research have you done and how much have you learned? I strongly suggest that before you get to handling bees next spring, you start doing a little studying. There are books, there are beekeeper associations in your area, there are YouTube videos, there are online courses, there are a lot of resources available to you that you should take advantage of. Learn as much as you can. You're not going to become an expert. I've been doing this for about 6 years, far from expert. But there are some basic things you should know before you start next spring. When it comes to books, we started with The Backyard Beekeeper. I think that's the correct title. I will put them in the section below. The Beekeeper's Handbook is the other one we relied on a lot, and I still rely on a lot. But when I look at online, when I look on things like Facebook, the most popular one seems to be Beekeeping for Dummies. So I'd recommend that also. I'm going to put a link in the description below to a list of books that we have, that we recommend at various stages, whether you're a beginner or a little bit more experienced. Being early September, it's still beekeeping season, even here in New York's Hudson Valley. We'll be working with these hives until probably beginning of November when we close them up for the winter. Still an opportunity to join your local beekeeping association where you can meet others in your area that can be a great source of information, maybe even somebody you can buy bees from. You might even find a local course. Local beekeepers are a great source of information because everything's local. The plants you have in your area are going to be different from what I have here. Your weather is liable to be different than what we have here. Those are all things you need to consider as you learn about how to take care of your bees. I highly recommend that you check out those associations now. One thing I hope you're aware of, I don't care how many guys you see on YouTube walking around their bee yards practically naked, like no big deal getting stung. You will get stung. So one thing to consider is whether or not you're allergic. I get stung. I tend to swell up in localized areas. It's annoying, it's itchy, it can be a little painful. I watch some of these guys on their YouTube channels, doesn't faze them in the least. You should probably check out or know if you're allergic, because if you're allergic, it could be a serious problem. Anaphylactic shock is nothing to play around with. Just check it out before you decide you're going to do this. Another thing you need to ask yourself is, do you have a location to do this? You need a place where you can put your beehives, where they have access to water, where there is plant resources for them to forage. You need to consider neighbors if you're in a suburban or an urban community. They may not like it, you may have problems with that, and in some municipalities you may have rules and regulations that limit what you can do in beekeeping. There may be limitations on how many hives you can have in a location. For example, if you're in New York City, I believe you actually have to register with the city and tell them how many hives you have and where they're located. Know that before you buy your hives and your bees and find out that there's an issue. As part of your learning experience, you'll want to think about what kind of hives you want to have. 3 main types that you'll see most likely are what's called the Langstroth hive, which are these back here. Probably the most common you'll see. I believe they're the most common in North America anyway. There's a similar type hive called a Ware hive. They're both vertical hives, meaning that the boxes are built upward and the colonies grow up. There's also horizontal hives. The most common one is probably what's called a top bar hive. There are Layens hives. There are long versions of these. By learning now, you can make a decision as to what type of hive you want to use. I suggest you use the Langstroth hive. It's the most common. You're going to find more people using it. If you need advice, if you need equipment, it's a lot easier to get. Doesn't mean it's the right one for you, just what we suggest. Learn about it, educate yourself, make a choice. Once you've decided on what hives you want, you're going to need to order them, get them delivered. You may want to paint them, get them ready. They need to be set up before your bees come. So there are timing issues here. Like I said, it's September. Before you know it, it's going to be the holiday season. You're liable to be busy with other things. Next thing you know, it's February. Got to be ready. Once you decide what kind of hives you want, you'll need to look around for a supplier. Like I said, these are very common. You'll find lots of places to buy these. You can go on Facebook and get into some of the beekeeping groups and ask advice. People may be able to give you advice for your locality. There might be a particular supplier in your area. There are national suppliers like Tractor Supply carries hives, and there are mail order or online order, mail order, showing my age here. Probably the biggest reason to get started now is that you're going to need to order bees sooner than you realize. I ordered my bees last year, I think in November. If you wait too long, bee suppliers may run out of them. You might find they get a little more difficult to get. I also recommend that if you can, you buy your bees locally. That way you don't have to have them shipped. Shipping is not good for the bees. Last year, I think with the pandemic, there were a lot of problems with shipping. If you ordered anything from online suppliers, you probably experienced it. The last thing you want is your bees sitting in a post office somewhere for a couple of weeks and you don't know where they are. If you can buy them locally, they are most likely adapted to your local environment already. You will have a beekeeper you can go to ask questions, possibly become a mentor for you. The ordering for the bees should probably be done before the end of the year because you're going to start taking delivery in March or April, maybe May. When it comes to bees, they typically come in two formats. One is called a bee package. It's about 3 pounds of bees, maybe 10,000 bees with a mated queen in a box that you dump into your hive when you have it set up. The other way is what's called a nuke, short for a nucleus colony. A nuke is a smaller version of these, probably 5 frames, that has frames of bees with some brood in there, maybe some stored nectar. It's like a jump-started hive. We started out with a nuke. I think it's a great way to start as a beginner. It's the easiest way to install, and it's something you're very likely to get locally. We have a couple of suppliers here within a 1 or 2 hour drive of us where we can pick up nukes. They're locally raised bees, so we know they're adapted to our environment. So that's what I recommend, but again, those often sell out sooner. The other thing to consider is what's called an overwintered nuke. That's a nuke of bees that went through the winter, so they made it through the winter. Those are the kind of genetics you'd like to have. There are price issues in all the choices you're going to have to make, which is another reason to start learning about it. A bee package will be your cheapest alternative. A nuke will be more expensive, and an overwintered nuke will be more expensive than that. Those pricing issues fall through a lot of things you're going to buy. So the more you know, the better you can work within your budget. When it comes to budget, you're going to see some things online that tell you can get started for $300. No. You may be able to get started for $300, but that's not going to get you very far. That's not going to get you through your first year. So really understand what the costs you're going to incur are before you jump in so that you're properly prepared. The purpose of this video is not to give you a complete tutorial on what you need to start beekeeping next year. It's really just to impress upon you the need to start early. You don't want to start in December. That's too late. This is a good time. Beekeeping season is starting to wind down. If you start now, come November, December, you'll be ready to start making the purchases you need to make, and you'll be much better positioned come April when you're putting your bees in your hive. One thing you might want to think about, another reason to start early, is whether or not you have a bear problem in your area. You may see here, I don't know if you can really notice here, but we have an electric fence set up. And the reason for that is we have bears. We lost our first hive ever to a bear. Ruined our first season. We had to start all over the next year. If you have bears in your area, you really should think about setting up some type of electric fence. It doesn't have to be this big. Again, it depends on your area. But the last thing you want to do is set up your hive in April and come out one day in May and find it wrecked by a bear. So give that some consideration also. This is something that requires planning and again might be affected by some regulations or rules where you live. We're planning to do some more videos where I'm hoping to get into more specifics about some of these things I've mentioned here. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell. If you didn't like it, feel free to give us a thumbs down, but I'd appreciate it if you'd comment with something constructive in the comments below and let me know why, so we can improve. Thanks for watching.